At FIE, we're not just
students
and faculty.
We're not only learners
and lecturers.
We are expanding minds,
Expanding futures.
We're redefining the classroom.
We are life-changing.
eye-opening. We are a community
Driven by our values.
That wants you.
you.
Yes, you.
To join.
Hello and welcome to In the Field, a podcast from FIE, where we will be exploring all things study abroad. I'm Dr. Heidi James Dunbar, writer in residence and senior faculty, and I will be your host. Joining me today is Dr. Alexis Franzese, who is the department chair and an associate professor for the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at Elon University, and a licensed psychologist with a small private practice. With academic training in the fields of sociology and psychology, her teaching and research interests are at the intersection of these fields, and her main area of expertise is within issues of self, identity, and well-being. She is especially passionate about her study of authenticity, being one's true self, and is currently conducting research on authenticity and identity within travel and tourism, with Disney as a strategic domain of focus. Her work has been published within edited volumes and other peer-reviewed collections, including journals that span the breadth of her scholarly interests. She's a graduate of Union College and Duke University, where she completed 2 separate doctoral degrees in sociology and psychology. She loves debating the ethics of authenticity and tries to incorporate her knowledge into her own approach and adventures. Join us as we explore the themes in her forthcoming book, Why the Magic Matters, her academic work and broader ideas such as authenticity, magic in learning, study abroad experiences, and Disney as a vehicle for edutainment. Hi, Alexis. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I've been really excited to talk to you, actually. There's so much to talk to you about. But first, I wondered if you could share a little about your academic journey and what drew you to the intersection of sociology, psychology, and teaching, because it's so fascinating.
Sure, absolutely. So I went straight to graduate school from my undergraduate education, where I had been a sociology major with minors in psychology and history. And I knew that I wanted to study medical sociology and social psychology. So I moved from New York to North Carolina to get started at Duke University. And I was really focused on issues of identity and how people thought about themselves. I was fortunate to have an advisor that had an interest in these and a passion for these topics. And in one specific research paper, she put out the possibility that as we age, we might be able to be more authentic, more genuine, more living in alignment with our values. And that absolutely caught my attention. So I was in the sociology program, and then halfway through that, I decided that I also wanted to be trained in thinking through the clinical applications of these issues of self and identity, and wanted to become a mental health professional. So I applied to and was accepted into the doctoral program in psychology. And so for a few years was concurrently in both of those programs. But the common thread across my training was this interest in authenticity and identity. So as a sociologist, I was interested in how our characteristics, our race and ethnicity, our gender identity, our age influence whether or not we can be authentic or feel that we can be authentic. And then in my psychology work, I was interested in the mental health consequences of inauthenticity, the cost to self when we feel like we are not able to say what's real for us, or we feel like we're in environments that are inhibiting us from being who we really are. So across the fields of sociology and psychology, social psychology was really my passion, and I just felt like I had to study it from both perspectives, and I did, and I enjoyed it the entirety of that journey and my decade at Duke.
That honestly is incredible. As you were describing that, it makes so much sense as to how these threads came together for you and the vitality of authenticity and actually what that means for us all, because, you know, our identity is in some ways quite difficult to piece together, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. And what I think is interesting is when, authenticity is definitely a buzzword right now. It's something that everybody's talking about. But as somebody who's been studying it for 20 years, there's a lot I've learned about it and believe about it that doesn't kind of make its way into the kind of public conversation about it. So as I think about it, authenticity is not this fixed thing. It's not the case that we have this true self that's buried beneath, and we just have to excavate it and pull back the layers and then figure out how to be that. What I've learned over the years is that authenticity is constantly evolving and it's dynamic. And what it means to be authentic at 20 might look quite different than what authenticity looks like at 40. And so I think sometimes people get stuck in thinking that being authentic just means being consistent across time. And while consistency matters, I think what's more important than consistency is for people to check in on what is true and values aligned for them. And that changes over the life course.
Yeah, well, I hope so. If it doesn't, I think that's where we're entering into real trouble, don't you think? Like, shouldn't we all be learning and developing and growing in some way? And things that you thought were absolutely right, maybe even 5-10 years ago, suddenly you're like, you know what, I've changed my thinking on this. I understand something differently.
Right. And I think, that's what gets some people to pursue therapy. Life just isn't feeling good. And when we unpack that a little bit, we can see sometimes that people are using standards and expectations and value sets that they subscribed to 15 years ago that no longer ring true. And so some of my work, I'm also I'm licensed in the state of North Carolina. Some of my work involves helping people to think about what their values are now and what resonates, and if they have built a life that reflects what's important to them now.
That makes sense. That really does make sense. I wonder if I could talk to you a little bit about your forthcoming book. I mean, it's out next week, imminently, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So Why the Magic Matters. I'd love to know what inspired the book and how it came to life, and perhaps how it developed.
Sure, absolutely. So I've talked a bit about authenticity, and my passion for authenticity is matched by my passion for understanding wellness and flourishing. And certainly authenticity and happiness and wellness go hand in hand. So to get to Disney, I've been teaching a course at my university for many years now called The Science of Happiness. And over a decade ago, our university was interested in developing Study USA offerings. So in-country travel embedded courses for our students. And I was invited to think through if I could contribute to this program. And I thought to myself, well, I'm already teaching a class on the science of happiness. Where is the happiest place? Well, it's Disney. So I designed this class where in our January term, I travel with Disney. I travel to Disney with students. And it's a really exciting opportunity for me because I'm bringing together a few different research literatures. So I bring in the research literature on the science of happiness. And then there's actually a really large research literature about theme parks as immersive experiences and about Disney specifically. So that class brings in all of that research literature. We travel to Disney. The students do their own research projects, which are so fun to oversee. And in doing that all these years, I've connected with other people, not just in the United States, but actually internationally, who do Disney work, who do Disney research. And I connected with a colleague at a nearby university who had heard my class discussed on a podcast called The Disney Dish. And we met up, and it was clear that we had a similar level of passion for Disney, and we brainstormed this book. She had the wonderful idea to bring in other people who are teaching Disney classes. And so we have this book called Why the Magic Matters that includes chapters that are authored by people who study Disney or teach Disney courses. I am so excited about the book because it's the book in teaching my Disney class that I wish the book like this existed, and now it does. And I'm excited. I'm excited for its release next week.
Yeah, congratulations. That's really is an extraordinary undertaking, I think. Am I right in thinking that one of the book sections is titled Leisure and Labour?
You are. So, inspired by my clinical work, one of the therapeutic practices I learned in my training at Duke is called dialectical behavior therapy. And that therapeutic approach focuses on the tensions between seemingly contradictory concepts. And so we decided to organize this book around different dialectical pairings that exist for Disney. And so I came up with 4 pairings, and we organized the book around them. We'll get to leisure and labor, but let me tell you what the other 3 are as well. So the book is organized around magic and strategy. So the fact that Disney makes things seem effortless, despite that they are heavily engineered. Authenticity and simulation, the fact that it feels real, despite that it's all kind of created and artificial. I say that Disney is the most genuine make-believe imaginable. And nostalgia and innovation. Disney simultaneously pulls on our longing for this past that kind of actually didn't occur, but also has all of these innovative themes and ideas. And then finally, leisure and labor, which is about the idea, I like to say, that Disney's great, but you will probably never work harder than on a Disney vacation. And so the chapters in that section are about that idea, about kind of the tension of that within Disney, about the work the consumer of Disney products does, from the parks to experiencing Disney films, and the benefits of that.
Fantastic. You've answered the question I was going to ask you. So I wonder then maybe if I could ask you about how, Disney is often sort of, I think, dismissed. I mean, a lot of people would be surprised that Disney is being studied at universities. I mean, obviously, I think it's an incredible thing to study, but it's dismissed as just, and I say that in inverted in quotes, entertainment. But what do you feel that Disney does teach us about culture and identity, and even say power structures and how our society operates?
So much. And that is the purpose of this book, to help people to think through what can be learned at and through Disney. I mean, if you trace the history and the development of Disney and Walt Disney's original intentions, that's a fascinating history to explore. But the parks teach us so much about what it means to be American, or at least this version of what it means to be American. And so when I teach this class, I invite students to explore that, to look for those themes, to look for what is being communicated in that setting, to think through if there's cultural appropriation that's occurring at Epcot, to think through why Disney resonates with people internationally to the degree that it does, and the implications of what it's communicating about American values. There's just so much to explore through study of Disney. And so the book really, it names the fact that for many people, Disney is an absolutely delightful experience. Not for everybody, but lots of people take delight in it. But all of the questions we should and can ask when we are in that setting.
Fantastic. Thank you. It's interesting, isn't it, how anything can be dismissed as just entertainment, for example, and what we're talking about, or just it's just a book, or it's like No, it's a cultural artifact that says something enormous about all of us or this point of
Absolutely.
time. Mm.
Yes. And
And
it's interesting too, because in higher education, we talk so much about experiential learning and student engagement.
Mhm.
And Walt Disney had that figured out in his design of the parks. He wanted the park settings to be immersive, experiential, engaging, settings. He wanted people to feel like they were part of the show, and even in the language that's used. So, in some interesting ways, I think we can think about the pedagogical tools that are suggested by analysis of Disney, and also the possibility of magic in some ways as a pedagogical tool, because those of us who labor over our agendas for classes, we are engineering it and then hoping that it all feels like it's falling into place, and that the students kind of join us on the ride of that experience.
perfect. So to build on that, what does that magic in learning look like, do you think? And how can we create that sense of wonder and imagination, or from what you're saying about Disney in particular, I think that emotional resonance in a college classroom setting?
That's a great question, Heidi. So, one concept that really comes to mind for me is the concept of suspension of disbelief. And that's a concept that can be traced back to Samuel Taylor Coleridge and was introduced in 1817. And the idea is that there are these opportunities where we can settle into the recognition that something is not as what it seems. And I feel like this is one of the things that Disney does so well. If you can stand on Main Street, USA, and suspend disbelief, your mind, your whole experience opens up and it feels and resonates in a different way. So I think this concept has relevance for teaching. So sometimes we need to invite students into that place when we're introducing them to different ideas that they might be outside their socialization or what they've been exposed to, or we want them to imagine possible futures that they don't see as feasible in the world that we're living in today. Kind of building relationship that invites them into that place. Within teaching, I feel like the relationships that we have with students are really, really important, and building that trust and sharing some of our own educational journeys and places where we might have resisted, or we felt we had transformational moments in our own educational experiences, can be useful, I think, in building that trust. I think there is absolute great value in traveling to different settings with students. I'm reflecting both on teaching my Disney course and the class I taught in partnership with FIE in London last year. There is nothing quite like being in a different place with students. And I think to some degree, it connects to the concept of awe, which is within the happiness research literature. And we experience awe when our brains don't have the ability to accommodate what we are experiencing. When we see something, we don't have a place to easily slot it. And so when you travel with students, we often have the opportunity to take them to places they haven't experienced before that contribute to that feeling of awe, and it emotionally resonates. I think about when I was teaching my class in London, and I took students to the old operating theater. And I'm not sure if have you been there, Heidi?
I have, yes. Long time ago,
Okay.
but yes.
Okay. Okay. I I love visiting there. I went there on my own term abroad in, I don't know, I think it was 1999. And so when I taught this class, I took students there. And you take them into this setting, into this very old facility, and they're sitting in the round and learning about how people used to observe surgery, and who had access to the front row seating and who had access to the back row seating, and how you had to have an apron on so that blood wouldn't splash on you in that space, and what sanitation measures were or were not available for instruments. And I could tell students about what surgeries used to be like, but bringing them to that space and having them observe it in that way is transformative in a way that just listening to the information is not. And so I think that I might even call an experience like that magical, because it's engaging and immersive in a really profound way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting how the word magical has sort of been co-opted or transformed to mean something supernatural, as opposed to something, as you're saying, that suspends you or is actually just transformative. It is transformative.
I think what's important there is to recognize that magic may be engineered, but that doesn't mean that it's fake, right? So as educators, we can engineer these experiences to create those moments of transformation, of awe, of suspension of disbelief. But the emotional impact of those experiences is real for the students.
Yeah, of course. It's like I used to teach a class on Harry Potter for us here, and we would talk about performative and iterative language as a form of spell. And that by me saying, I now pronounce you as man and wife, or this baby is now named, or these are magical transformations. Those words, they're a spell. It's, it's magic surrounds us everywhere. It's kind of just understanding it, I think.
That sounds like a great class.
It was a great class. It's still being taught. I'm just not teaching it now, but it's a fantastic class. It is a fantastic class, just as your Disney sounds fantastic. Can we talk a little bit more about your experience here at FIE? I was just wondering how being a part of that travel abroad, both for you as a student, because am I right? You just said you traveled yourself and studied abroad, right? As a student and as a lecturer, how that shaped, if at all, your understanding of identity and learning and that that cultural connection and learning.
Oh, there is so much to say there, both in the personal and the professional. And in my own journey, I had done a term abroad, and I think it was 1999, on studying healthcare systems internationally. And so it felt really very full circle for me to return to the same city, London, where I had studied in my own term abroad, and kind of create that experience for students that was similar to what I had had. I think it was, for me, so personally transformative, and I imagine for the students too, because particularly following the pandemic, I didn't realize how small my world had gotten. I'd forgotten how much world was out there. I don't know how else to say that. And so being in London just kind of exposed me in this really profound way to how limited my perspective had actually over time become. And I didn't mean for that to happen. And I had, I've been in academia all these years, and I consider myself well-read and informed, but my world was shaped by my routines and the patterns of my life, and raising children and going to work every day. And so leaving place, I feel like, I'm sorry, I'm jumping from a few different things, but I feel like the thoughts that we have are dictated by the environments that we are in. And so I was only having the thoughts that I could have as a resident of North Carolina, which is, where I live. And so in being in London and in traveling to all these different sites, the thoughts that I was having were radically different than what I even had access to at home. So I think for students, that kind of experience that they have by traveling internationally and studying internationally gives them the opportunity to thinking about the world in radically different ways than they could do in their home environments and their home institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree with you more. We all need sometimes to be unsettled in a very positive way out of our sort of very set routines and ways of encountering our worlds.
Right. And we think about ourselves differently. Like the capabilities I understood myself as having as a result of having navigated the London semester. And I saw it in myself as much as I saw it in my students. Like the competencies I recognize in myself just in navigating. I mean, we had an excursion every single week in my class. So we were going all around London. And I became skilled at that. By the end of that semester, my level of comfort on the tube in navigating the city, my familiarity with it. And I also, traveled a bit while I was in country. I experience myself, I see myself differently as a result of that experience. And I watch the students lean into that themselves. Some did it more than others, right? Some students I think resist that. Like there's something, and maybe it's a developmental piece, right? If you're 20 years old, you might not be fully ready for that. You can only do so much of that. But I also saw other students who went back to campus different than they had arrived in London, who there's what I feel like what will be possible for their lives. It has been expanded because of studying abroad. Their lives will look different 20 years from now because of what they did as a college sophomore or a college junior.
Yeah. We can't say any more than that, really, can we? You've said it beautifully. What's next for you, for your research or creative projects? Is there another book or ideas brewing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I am actually doing a book project now on the topic of authenticity, which really is my passion. And, as someone who's been studying for authenticity for 20 years, I really want to bring that information out and share it more widely. So that is really how I am filling my time right now. I am teaching my Disney course this January. So I've met with those students. We'll be using the book, which I'm so excited about to get to use that and have that material available to us. Trying to plan my next travel experience, because what I learned from this is that my efficacy as a professor is going to be enhanced by regular and repeated exposure to settings that support me in thinking different thoughts.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to that book. And just as a final thought, speaking about authenticity, is there anything you would recommend for all of us in sort of keeping magic and authenticity sort of alive and part of our lives, so we don't just slump into the ordinary? What can we all do to stay in that space?
Yeah. Two things that I would say about that. I do think that there is great importance to having novel experiences. So to whatever degree you can do something different, and this doesn't have to be something costly. Like we can't always afford an overseas adventure, but there's little things we can do. Like sometimes I will, within North Carolina, go to a town, just pick a town on the map and spend an afternoon in that town exploring it as if I was a North Carolina resident and taking it in. So go to a different restaurant, eat a different meal, do a different exercise routine, have a conversation with somebody new, play a different board game, like listen to different music. Don't just put on your playlist, try something different, go to a dance class, take a watercolor class. Like just bringing in novelty, I think is so important for our well-being. And then in terms of authenticity, I think that, and this connects in that when you do those new things, some of them are going to feel like a win and others are going to feel like never again. My son recently wanted to do paintball. That's a never again for me. So it was certainly a novel experience. And it's one that I have actually no interest in ever repeating. So authenticity involves checking in with yourself about what's actually true for you, not how you think you should feel. I always, when talking about authenticity and happiness and wellness, we'll give the example of nature. And the importance of being in nature for happiness. I love nature. And nature, time outdoors is so important for happiness and well-being. I thought I needed to be the kind of person who liked camping. I wanted to be the kind of person who likes camping. I do not like camping. I like hiking. And so my efforts to make myself camp did not contribute to my happiness and well-being because I was miserable. But when I hike and stay in a hotel after, if it's a trip far away, I am gloriously happy. So that is authenticity. That is being like, okay, what's real for me? Like checking in with yourself and finding the genuine, making room for it, and I had to let go of it because I wanted to be the person who likes camping.
Yeah.
But I'm not. And that's okay. So I think that's what authenticity is, kind of knowing who you are, making room for who you are. And I do believe that when we make room for who we are, we're better equipped to also make room for others to be themselves as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That really does resonate for me. And I think particularly for students now, and this might feel like it's slightly oblique, but I feel there's such a push to be the best, to pass everything, to get the greatest grades, to never fail, that is inauthentic, and we're not serving our young people or ourselves very well because it's not authentic, and it also isn't possible. And it's okay to not like something. It's okay to not do it very well.
Right.
It's okay to misspeak and apologize and learn. Like this kind of idea that we must always be perfect and great and good.
Yes, absolutely, Heidi. When I'm working with students, like in an advising capacity, the first thing I want to figure out is what matters to them. Like what is important to them? Because we have cultural stories about what should matter to us, what a successful life looks like. But the fact is that is deeply personal. Some people having great financial wealth is really important to them. Other people, not so much. So inviting students to think about what's true. And sometimes that invitation is useful just because it gives voice to other models. When you ask somebody, how important is this aspect to you, it alerts them to the fact that it doesn't have to be supremely important, that there's a range of possibilities for how important it could be to them. And so I think those conversations can allow people to consider possibilities for their future that they might not immediately have had access to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me and speaking with me. This has been a really wonderful experience for me.
Me too. I've really enjoyed it. You have me thinking some new thoughts. So thank you for that.
Brilliant. And I can't wait to read the book. Thank you so much, Alexis. And to learn more about our faculty courses and programs, do visit our website, www.fie.org.uk. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please do check out our others wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. FIE provides life-changing study abroad experiences in the UK, Ireland and Spain. As a non-profit educational organisation, we are passionately invested in making a difference for our students as the future global leaders of tomorrow and the field of international education as a whole. The FIE podcast is a creative and academic space for exploring everything, the people, the places and opportunities that make your experience so valuable and exciting.
FIE, we're here to help you
Unlock a wider
brighter future.